Hello and welcome to the Money Charts channel. My name is Derek and we are entering into the 12th day of January 2020. All bets, trades, and of the like. That is within each own risk reward. For myself, risk reward management is always job number one. So this is where the resistance lines were. Now they're up here. So this downtrend, well, at least it might be done, in that these two periods on the daily broke nicely above the 18 average highs of the highest prices and establishing a level of resistance right in there. Since then, two periods back down the highs and is holding in there. So it's an attempt. It's either going to succeed or it's going to fail. And that's the obvious part. But I know on the failing part, I'm going to use this 18 where it came from here around the 7,500-ish area. And every time I see something like that, like the case was in October, it's going to be probably a decent leg lower. That's the negative side. On the positive side, the attempt to resume, all that type of stuff, get this into a bull market. And from this high, we see a little attempt in here, but it hasn't made a high since then, thus doing all of this. Not really much of an attempt here. But yeah, this was a realistic attempt that failed. Not much of an attempt here, but this is much. Or yes, much of an attempt. I think that's opposite of not much of an attempt. So getting it above here, then this thing has the prospects to test some of these further levels of resistance. Next ones are, I say, empty space, retracement mode, which is another lower high, then following that, previous high, and then getting out past that, then you start to talk about the highs that I had way back at the end of 2017. And then breaking that, you're in new charter territory. On the hourly chart, I drew these Fibonacci lines in before representing this high within this low. And as we came down to this point on January the 9th lunchtime session, it found this failed support where it had this failed breakout. But the leg lower was nothing really. It broke down key support and then it had a beautiful rise there after the fact. That's giving you like a U-V-ish shape formation. I do find this period in here a little interesting, however, like a breakout attempt that ultimately, well, I can't say ultimately because ultimately means end of play, failing along the while, but maybe not. Will this hold and stay above this 18 from this? I got to see more about this move. But before we do, obviously within this so far so hold, if it can stay and hold in this area, it had an attempt to get it above here, but getting it towards that level, that's what we're talking about. As I mentioned on the daily, get it above here, then the daily chart would be making new highs. This would be making new highs or above the 18, that is, and things would be looking very good. But I'm really curious about this, and I haven't seen the shorter term time frame as of yet. I'm going to change the exchange to Binance because I think it's got a better 1 minute chart, which I'll probably be going up or looking at. So let's take a look at it. 15-minute. Wow, whoa, look at this. 16:30, 4:30 p.m. Some big rally came in and it instantly was rejected as it was an attempt to get above the level of resistance first established here January 10th or yesterday night, reattempted again earlier at lunchtime, and then a few hours later had this big move, but an immediate sell-off towards that fact. So far, it's holding in there pretty good. So short term, you can talk about retracement from this high to this low. I'm not going to go over there, but 1 minute, let's just take a look at this. Now, these things can get rejected fast, and they're not a big surprise within these markets. Big volatility. But one few periods going up like it is, big volume coming in towards this high, and it kept going in for a while. So sellers obviously coming in at that point for whatever reason afterwards. I have so many theories why. One of them is because if someone's looking to aggressively sell large or buy large, same thing on the opposite end, you could have sell orders in here. And they get filled because someone's buying. And well, of course, we're talking the big money in this spot. So people are buying up there, you're selling. Now you're like, okay, I've sold X amount at what would be an average of say 82 something. Now I can sell this little bit extra more, and I'll secure this average of what I want to get of say, I don't know, maybe 81 high whatever, 80 something in that level. Just one of the things that I'm thinking about. Plus, of course, any type of psychology levels that they use, and there's always tricks up people's sleeves into this game, and the game, of course, of buying and selling. Now let's transition into Dash, both against the Bitcoin and against the US fiat. And we'll do the monthly term timeframes here within the monthly. Pretty much at all-time lows or lifting off from it, at least this month. Up right now 42.55%. Yeah, just this little bit here is up 42.55%. All right, that's on the monthly. On the weekly chart, from this high, and this high is like 20, it appeared originally after this monstrous move, pretty much from the start of 2017, concluding in March. About a 3-month run. This thing was went from the 100 handle up to the 1150 handle, or about a 12x move. And then from that hot point, it has not been able to get above this 18 average of highs really at all. Within this interesting little setup here, but then the decline. This is pretty much when it all started. We have resisting on the high, huge loop move here, and then declining within the band. There's a little bit of this attempt, and like I stated earlier, when you see this, you see weakness on the 18 lows. You see how it breaks below it, resists it. Then we've seen a couple periods doing this. There's your breakdown. There's your failed move. All right, so nothing to even come close to yet even flattening out the band from this decline until now. For this, didn't flatten out the band. A move like this magnitude here, getting above here, that would be enough to do something like that. For me to say, okay, this is giving me the statement that this is looking to establish a move higher, I need at least in here. And for me to say establish resistance, I'd probably like too small, too big. This is too small. This would be something like in the just right. And this is normal. And this is probably what I want anyway. This would be too big. Just like, yeah, this move here would be too small. This would be just right, and this would be too big, and it was bigger. And the whole point is these cryptos can do that in a fly. When they're ready to go, they can just skyrocket. They've done this so many times in the past. Let's take a look at this on the daily chart, and now this is where it becomes a little bit interesting, because we have within this decline, we'll say from the highs of last year's highs almost a year ago, this neutralized the situation. A small attempt here, but nothing doing, and a horrendous decline. Didn't even test the 18 highs until here, not even getting above it, and then immediately rejecting it. This little failed breakout to the highs, again rejecting it. Almost at flattening this little area out, not quite, and then the failed breakout attempt. So whether this will turn out like this again, maybe, and maybe not. And in this scenario, when it had its correctionary test, the first one, hey, you could say that was just like that. And then it had its move higher, and now it's had its move higher, but how are we going to react from this point on? Each time can be the same, can be different. When it did have its run to this point, it held and stayed above in the 18, but what it failed to do was break out above this in several days, or day on the daily time frame. But it broke down below here. No real attempt here. No real attempt here. I mean, just getting to the highs, and now a real attempt statement was made. We're going to revert the trend. They're now doing it. So within this process, it's either going to be a success or a failure. Therefore, when we're talking success, and I've used this word empty space for retracement on Fibonacci, there's a lot of empty space just a previous high. The retracement from Fibonacci, when you go high divided by low, well, what have we retraced so far? 8%, hardly anything at all. The opportunity for large moves higher, if the market's ready to go for big gains, it might be, well, it's most certainly there. Now, if you finish this off within the cross against the dollar, and we'll go back. We'll go from short to long. Last time we went from the opposite end. So same thing here. Coming up, resisting the establishment, and bull market, of course, because stage 1, bad flattening out. Stage 2, established resistance. Pretty big one, but hey, decent. Come back to where you came from, or not where you came from, but come to correctionary mode, because technically it didn't come back to where you came from here. And then break established resistance. There it's going higher, lifting above the 18, and now it's just broken it. So it's a newly bull market. We'll see how this thing ends up going. But as far as that status is concerned, I guess that would make it official, I suppose. When we take a look at this on the weekly chart, we had this high of over $1,000. And we're just coming off of its lows of 40. And it's resisting even the lows of December of around 57. And then we look at it from this perspective here. This was a coin, a crypto, that when that rally happened, well, it's just at the lowest areas against Bitcoin. But against the dollar, this thing broke out at the start of the year from like $9, a little under 10. And then went up over 100 times, or about that. And then from this low, you're going from $1 up to 1,000. So we can talk all we want about the Bitcoin numbers, and I'm not going to bring the charts up because we already know the numbers. You have Bitcoin near 10,000. We had a high near 20,000, maybe go to 60, 80, 120. Okay, so be it. 120 would be like a 15x move. A 15x move here would get us back to previous high. And then on a significant break of established resistance, which was already been placed in at that, it will even go like 12.5, 12.50. Oh, we're talking about maybe going like not too low, not too high, just right. And it just seems, it always picks the just too high a lot of times. Just like I say, when cryptos are ready to go. But a move just coming up here, you're talking about failed breakout opportunity if it just goes up to like, say, 2,300. I mean, if you go way up to like, say, 117,000, that's just a kick-ass move. And I suppose cryptos like to do that, but that would be too big. A normal one would be somewhere maybe up here, around maybe $6,000. But you know what? That's only about that's not even a 100x move. From 65 to 6,000, that is not 100x. Albeit a little bit close. As price action goes in here within the weekly, still we have this declining average, enough to flatten out. If it can get above to the area close to 100, then it would be establishing, yet again for the second time since this high, to get this back into a bull market. And when we now go to the monthly chart, it's still in this declining average. It's just working towards, it's not even close yet to flattening out the span. It needs just to get up to 125 to do that. So a real long-term breakout, you need to be talking about like 235-ish point area. But when it gets down to it, if there's going to be a success in cryptos, then the next question is, with any alt, will this one survive? And if it does, the most likely scenario will be that of having great gains against Bitcoin, because these numbers against the dollar will go up like ferocious. And that's just how it's going to be. And of course, crypto's failing, then all these things will go down together. You're not going to have spots where, okay, Bitcoin's going to go up, say, over the next 2 years, or not even 2 years, say over like, say, 9 months or 4 months, Bitcoin goes up, say, 3 times against the dollar, where Dash will lose 30% against the dollar. And then for the next year after that, Dash is going to triple against the dollar, where Bitcoin will lose 3 times against the dollar. That's nothing like that could ever happen. But the scenario of either it happens or it doesn't, and the world's going through interesting stuff just to start this new decade off already. As we've seen a lot with the things going on, at least with Iran and the plane issue, as there was an accidental plane shot down. I guess from what I heard, they thought it was a missile. I don't follow too much news, and I really don't want to. I really don't care to, but I know I'm going to hear it. I know it is important as well. And it's going to affect a lot of these markets as we move forward, especially as monetary issues within fiat currencies do become problematic. And I do think that they are becoming worse. All right, let's just finish this off then with some of the other major staples against Bitcoin. They've been all in downtrends, Litecoin, and yet another attempt here as well. Situations in which we had, the band's been going flat for a while with all this established resistance. And after resisting it on 2 different times in here, now it's breaking out. It's already had a move, not too small. It's not big. It might end up being so, but it's now at least just right area where you can clearly notice it's a significant break. If it comes down here, this should coincide with this 18, and of course, that's where the must hold, all that stuff is. Next chart is that of Ripple. And it had a significant breakdown all throughout going down over the last while as well. It's trying to come through. It had an interesting failed move, and it's still trying to recover from it, still below the 18. Ethereum, so it's not showing any nice little signals by any means, but still holding in there in the sideways move from the start of the winter solstice. A lot of the similarity with Ethereum as well, down a lot. You can see how much from the highs of 2018, just been consistently making lower highs and lower lows. And then there's this down move here. An overall sense, I guess you can say the same sort of time frame. Still trying to find decision. Established has been so established in the area. If it breaks down below, then we're in that downtrend, and there's been so many attempts to get and we bring this into a bull market. They've all failed thus far, and it needs to really get above like 191 or so here. And I'll finish it off within Bitcoin Cash. And you had this early volatility here, but from this decline in here, one really good failed rally attempt in here, which really didn't have that big of a fall, but most certainly did. It came back to the area from where it came from, piercing above previous low. Resistance here, resistance here, resistance here, resistance here, where we are. So it's totally been neutral going sideways during this entire run. And then from this last low, we've had one leg higher, which matched into this point, successful correction. Nice leg higher, successful correction at the lows again. There we see leaving the 18, didn't find resistance here. It's kind of only been barely above this fact that if we have any selling, I'd be looking at the 18 as support. But what really catches my eye about this is it's at an area where if it's able to get above what is a multiple hit point. Well, now we're starting to talk about hitting this empty space and up towards this retracement. But there's been so many of these key points, and like it was in 2017, like during the time, everything goes up together, and pretty much since that high now of about 25 months ago. Practically everything's been going down together. So if there comes a period where Bitcoin goes up to those key levels, it wouldn't be a surprise if it's just the same sort of deal again. Other altcoins go up higher against the dollar, thus charts like this crossed against the BTC on the right-hand side. It's main base currency for this market. Well, it would go up as well. Thank you for tuning in this market. It would go up against Bitcoin. Thank you for tuning in. Have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.